game design. A wonderfully nebulous term that uneducated people like you and me only use to praise a game we like or bash a game we hate. But there are some things even you and I understand as pretty core design principles, unwritten rules, if you will, that make a game worth playing. There's a reason no one has made the bold, creative decision to have you control each individual wheel in Mario Kart. But then you have Bayonetta Origins, Cereza, and the Lost Demon, which is just such a fun but bizarre experience. It makes everything I learned from this book I bought when I was 13 as a memorial to Lost Dreams seem meaningless. Bayonetta Origins gets away with so many odd design decisions and still ends up being a pretty memorable experience. So as an excuse to wax poetic on this game for 12 minutes, let's go through the core rules that Origins has no problem breaking. Perhaps the most damning rule Bayonetta Origins goes against is have an audience. Now, is an audience necessary for a work of art? Can the art not stand as fulfillment to those that have crafted and poured their heart into it, regardless of whatever audience it cultivates? Sure, but good luck pitching that in a boardroom. That Bayonetta in Wonderland It Takes Two for Fun HD is the next thing the world needs. But that pitch was nonetheless greenlit by Platinum Games. So what is the goal? Are they trying to get the devoted Bayonetta fans in on this new prequel game? Well, Origins looks super different and nothing like the grim-world M-rated adventures of the mainline Bayonetta games. Take those mainline games of blood, gore, partial nudity, strong language, and now pivot to fantasy violence.
In a gumdrop house on Lollipop Lane.
Origins doesn't have the intense action combos or over-the-top set pieces of the prior games, instead opting for a dumbed-down It Takes Two battle exploration game. What does this game offer for hardcore, returning Bayonetta fans other than a little bit of lore? It is very likely not going to be their cup of tea, gameplay and theming-wise. Well, if it's not for hardcore fans, are they trying to find a new audience? Make Bayonetta a more colorful and approachable title? That was probably the actual intent, but it is still a game with demons and hell, as any Bayonetta game must. And as a prequel, it seems like you'd need to play the mainline games to understand everything. The marketing trailer involves panning back the pages from Bayonetta 3. The trailer has the "before she became Bayonetta" tag. It's being pitched as a cool tale from the past that connects to the current game series. That attachment to an existing IP makes it not so attractive even for new audiences. For people who are thinking of picking up this new game as their first Bayonetta title. So how do you get people in the door? How do you get people to buy in on a prequel game that strongly deviates from the games audiences are already attached to? The answer was presentation! The trailers show off this wondrous storybook aesthetic that just looks pretty. Yes, those trailers don't garner the "hell yeah, that looks sick, slaying some demons, bro" that the mainline games do. Instead, they garner a "hey, that looks interesting, that looks unique." Origins has a striking visual presence that catches your eye and doesn't let you just disregard it as a random game the B team of a popular IP worked on. I'm not an artist, so I can't really get too technical other than it just looks cool. It looks great. Okay, they found a way to get people to pick up the game and boot it up on the Switch. Now they need you to keep playing. For that, the next rule any game needs to follow is first impressions are everything. A player's time is valuable. They cannot be meandering around waiting for action or whatever was promised to them. You can't give them a string of cutscenes and little interaction where they're just watching a movie. A game needs to set off on a good hook to grip the player and show them that this game is worthy of their time. This is especially important nowadays when your game isn't competing so much with other video games, but more so with this, and this, and this. Even in this new media landscape, there is a tried and true fun curve that I'm going to use here for simplicity that starts a good bit up for the game's hook and then simmers down for some exposition and breaks once the player is already somewhat invested. Then you can work your way back up throughout the adventure to get to that climax at the end, but the beginning is your sales pitch. Bayonetta Origins takes so long to get to the fun stuff. You do not battle until 45 minutes into the game. You have to go through cutscenes, walking, chores, more walking, more chores.
Are you a witch?
More cutscenes until you finally enter the forest and can really play the game. For an action game, it is quite devoid of action at the start.
I'm afraid that when we get to dessert, I'm gonna nut.
The box promises thrilling action and intricate puzzles. I do not count spinning the left stick as an intricate puzzle. The solution is, again, presentation. The game looks great, we already knew that from trailers, and it looks the part in these opening cutscenes. The storybook appearance is fantastic. But there's other parts of presentation that we couldn't really gauge from trailers alone. For starters, it uses stereo sound very well. Stereo is not a groundbreaking technology at this point, but the game leverages it very well to enhance its presentation. That opening sequence of suspicious voices swirling around you as Cereza gets lost in her nightmare, and little sounds and pips coming out directionally on certain sides of the speakers. Though maybe stereo isn't the right way to put it. The voices were recorded using a binaural microphone that can record sounds three-dimensionally. Here we first applied effects to the pre-recorded voices and played these through the speakers in front of the binaural mic that would pick up and record this sound. They can produce a unique three-dimensional sound that can cause a listener to feel the tingling sensation associated with the ASMR phenomenon. On top of that, if the game is going to make you sit through cutscene after cutscene and try to make you care about the characters, it better throw in voice acting to really bring home that attachment. Every cutscene in Origins is voice acted, and they all do a great job.
And a child was born with the blood of both sage and witch. Do not tell me that in addition to your outdoor tasks, you're also neglecting your hair.
Morgana is always dangerous this and stay away that.
The narrator especially is so good. It really is like having a parent reading a fairy tale to you. Now, having a narrator at all feels very weird for an interactive experience and breaks our sub-rule of show, don't tell. This is not a book. So why do you need to tell me Morgana was unamused when I can see she's unamused? But the game is so heavily committed to the storybook that I don't really care that it treats me like a toddler. The cutscene pages are nicely painted out. The page turn transitions you in and out of cutscenes. And then there's Cheshire. Unlike Cereza, Morgana, and every other character, Cheshire does not have his own voice actor. The narrator instead acts out this big, scary monster with a gruff, deep voice.
I have no name, replied the demon curtly. Next time that thing shows its ugly mug, I'm gonna beat it to a pulp.
It's phenomenal and again commits to the idea of someone reading you a bedtime story, and that this is the big, bad monster.
I wouldn't have cast it any other way.
It is a bedtime story with blood red fangs and hell, but a bedtime story nonetheless. You can also pick where the narrator speaks from with that aforementioned stereo capability, if you want, I guess. The early simple tasks also at least get you tuned to how weird this game is. Field actions are done with the L button here, buddy. I hope you hate the A button with all your soul, because aside from navigating menus, it is the literal last button that is unlocked for gameplay. So again, the game's presentation really carries it and keeps you engaged through an otherwise dull opening. And it buoys you over to what is a simple combat and puzzle game where the real challenge is trying to maximize the whack concept of the game, controlling two people with different abilities with one controller. The last thing I want to discuss with Bayonetta Origins isn't really a rule it breaks, If anything, it's a rule it follows, which helps it overcome its weaknesses. Also, now we're very much getting into spoiler territory if you care for a year-old game. For a cutscene, story-driven game, Origins' plot is very cut and dry. A middle schooler could accurately predict the entire story, word for word, bar for bar. Honestly, a bit refreshing for the series in some aspects, but the story is nonetheless quite simple. And with like 4 characters, it's not going to be super complex with arcs. Voice acting's great and everything, but are we really going anywhere narratively or emotionally in the Forbidden Forest? And then gameplay-wise, it does kind of drag its feet at times. Combat feels very samey even as you unlock new abilities. The Tir na Nogs, don't know if I'm pronouncing Latin right, are almost entirely combat with barely any puzzles in the game's second half. You can also see this in the fall-off of elemental powers. The grass power lets Cheshire whip out his tongue and like move things around and take shields off of enemies. The stone element can be used on switches and to block lasers. The water element opens up some lily pad movement, but then the fire element doesn't do anything. It is just fire that melts ice. There's no puzzle relevance to the final element you unlock. The game fails to consistently push forward, fails to consistently present puzzles or combat that feels new or refreshing the way it does at the start. But where Origins does succeed is in what I'll call high leverage situations. Is regular enemy combat getting a bit repetitive? Alright, here's the Jabberwock fight, which is an absolute gauntlet, utilizing multiple perspectives and a further zoomed out camera to really feel the weight and scale of the moment. The Morgana onslaught at the end is completely mesmerizing to the eyes and really requires you to lock in. Or I'm just bad.
First person ever.
Is it predictable that Cheshire and Cereza have a falling out before learning to trust each other? Yes, but Cereza uses her newly learned restoration magic to prevent Cheshire from dying and have that growth be symbolized by her new haircut. Is it predictable that Cheshire gets possessed and Cereza has to just gently calm him down? Yes, but then she sings him Fly Me to the Moon as a lullaby, and it's adorable.
And let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
The fun per second is not all too high throughout the game, but when it wants to make it very high, it can get up there.
He gets high.
And even if the story is predictable, Origins makes sure to do the little things right. As Cheshire and Cereza's relationship develops, it's demonstrated in all the usual gameplay tasks you have to do. Cheshire goes from shunning indifference to Cereza's training to cheering her on. Cheshire goes from splattering devil fruit juice all over the place to slowly ramping up to be a tidy and respectful demon. Why has Nintendo not tried to sell me a Cheshire plush? He's such a good little boy. And of course, there's Cereza cutting off her hair in the emotional climax so that her appearance is a constant reminder of her own growth and Cheshire's newly found trust in her. Wrapping this all up, I grew up a Nintendo geek, obviously. I had the hard line of visuals don't matter, fun matters. But it's silly to make something out to be so black and white. Yes, having good visuals doesn't necessarily make a game fun, but visuals are all they have to bring you in. The presentation, the appearance, the aesthetics.
Somebody's gotta put the thesaurus down.
It's much easier to see a trailer and say a game looks good rather than a game looks fun. You cannot bring yourself truly into the story. You cannot understand how the character feels to control. You can't envision for sure how something that seems so completely off base can be fun at all. You can see high quality visuals and make the through line that the rest of the game is of high quality. Is that always a correct assumption? Absolutely not. But by having that striking visual appearance, Cereza and the Lost Demon gets a much better selling point. And this game shows that good visuals does not have to mean hyper realistic. Bayonetta Origins has its visuals and presentation do all of the heavy lifting and bring you through what is otherwise a pretty meh game if I'm being honest. The overall concept for the game's artwork is that of a picture book style. As for why I went with that, well, I was honestly just going with my gut feeling. For one thing, there was that desire to see something in this spin-off that couldn't be done in the mainline Bayonetta games. Do I prefer it over Bayonetta 3? No, but it is a wonderful example of how everything from artistic design to sound to VFX to music all come together to put on a memorable show that is maybe only doable under the guise of a wacky spin-off.
A calm returned to Avalon Forest. As if to wash away the pain of the night, the first rays of dawn enveloped Cereza, bathing her in their warmth.